Good evening, folks. Welcome back to another Monday night live stream. How the devil is everybody? Hope you all had a fantastic weekend, and I hope you're all looking forward to next weekend when we have our top table legacy weekend or two. So any of you that are in the chat, I've seen a few names there that I know are going to be there. Can't wait to catch up with you all next weekend. And in the meantime, yeah, what have you been up to? What have you been doing this weekend? What's your plans for next weekend if you're not going to the weekender? What's going on in your gaming life? Let's have a quick look, see who we've got in the chat, and then we'll get cracking straight on with the subject for tonight. Because I posted it in some Facebook groups today. I like to get a bit of feedback to see lots of different opinions, so I can kind of shape some of my counter arguments or some of my sort of agreements, so I can kind of shape the conversation a little bit. So it's always good to get some comments. And actually this one, it kicked off a bit more conversation than I think I was expecting. If you don't know, tonight's subject is about physical kind of hard copy rulebooks versus digital rulebooks. And whilst this one has been kind of prompted around Warcry, and I'll come on to why that's prompted it, this is relevant for any tabletop game that you play. Doesn't matter what the game is, I still want your opinions on whether you prefer hardback copies, and tell me why you prefer them, because I've heard lots of reasons why people say that they prefer them, or if you prefer digital versions, and why some people prefer them. I've kind of flip-flopped with which I prefer, and I'll come on to that when I get into the subject. So that's what it is tonight anyway. So let's see who we've got. Peter Nicholas was in nice and early. Hello, Peter Nicholas. How you doing, mate? If you're still around. Pete Smith is in as well. Good evening, Pete Smith. Tony Howlett is in as well. Good evening to you guys. All their YouTube members there as well, with your nice green letters there and your little BlackJack symbols. Philip Wilkinson is in as well. Hello, Phil. How are you doing, mate? Steve Evans is in. He says evening all as well. He's definitely a hard copy fan. We'll get on to that, mate. We got Mad Looper in as well. Good evening, Mad Looper. Paul Palms is in. Evening, buddy. How you doing? Making me jealous with your pictures of your lunch today, mate. I had a sandwich. You had a very beautiful, I think, was it like squid and chips? I think it was. Where we are, Tony Howell. Have I mentioned Tony? Yes, I have mentioned Tony. We've also got Christian Reeves in. Hello, mate. How you doing? We've got, it's suddenly jumped up with loads more chat there. We've got Aggression in. We've got Glenn Seymour in. See you at the weekend, Glenn. And hello, Aggression. We've got Christopher Warden in. Hello, Chris. Hal Martin, James Hart, Michael Marines, Mark Berracloth. Green Trees in as well. Hello to you a lot. Animus Oculus. We've got Robert Zunk in as well. Andy Young. Hello, Andy. How are you? Bobby Clark's in. Painting some custodies tonight. Zingbo's in. Peter saying he's going to be at our weekender as well. Looking forward to meeting you in the flesh, mate. Different Gear TV's in. Marco's in as well. Craig Lowther in. Good evening, Craig, as well. Red Rose Wargaming is in. Says, busy building the Warcry Corpse Rack Mausoleum tonight. On your YouTube channel there, Red Rose Wargaming, I only just found out you had a channel today, so I checked it out, subscribed. Some really, really cool stuff about Underworlds and Warcry. So anybody wanting to check out that channel, I think you've been going for a few years, but decided to kind of focus on some new content, I think, from reading between the lines. So yeah, everybody head over, check that out. Good to see some other kind of content around those games as well. Where are we up to? We've got Al Krabi in as well. Alvaro Valesco Esquedo, I think I pronounced that right. Says, having worked in digital stuff for the past 14 years, I can assure you I'm a hard copy guy. Barry Kleiber's in as well. Glenn Griffin, Jog PLC, Josu Philippe Toro Tamango. I hope I pronounced that right. I apologise if I butchered it. Jason Collins is in as well. Thor Delim's in. Paul M is in as well. Loads of people already chatting about hard copy versus sort of digital copies and stuff. So I'm going to dive straight into the conversation with it about this one tonight, and then I'll come back and I'll pick up on some of the things that you lot have been talking about as well. Let me just flick something over on my screen so I can see. There we go, so I can see how many we've got in and kind of keep up with the numbers as well. And hello at Duffy McCloskey is when it just come in. So where's the point of this conversation come from? The other thing as well, just before I move on, I'm trying a different microphone tonight as well. Let me know if you think it sounds the same, better or worse. Just trying a few different things as well. So, yes, digital versus hard copies. I've always been hard copy as well, and I know there's a lot of people will kind of prefer hard copy. When I'm reading something, I tend to prefer to have the physical copy in my hand. Recently, when the Warcry anthology book came out, I bought the anthology as a hardback book, and I didn't buy the digital version of it because there is something quite nice about sitting reading a physical book in my hand. I do have a Kindle. My wife has an iPad that I could use as well. I've got an old kind of sort of Amazon Fire tablet thing that I got as a Christmas gift one year from work. So I do have sort of equipment I can use digital copies on. But I just like sitting reading a book. There's something quite relaxing about sitting, reading a book, have a cup of coffee, kind of, and chill out a little bit. However, when it comes to rule books, I think that's very slightly different. And I'm starting to kind of change my opinion. Alvaro saying they butchered my name. Appreciate the try. Call it Albrov. That'll do. Albrov then. That'll do, mate. I'll try and remember that. Yes. So what's changed my opinion recently is a lot of games I've played in the past have been games from companies like Mantic, people like I'm trying to think some other companies and stuff, Fantasy Flight Games, and they tend, if I separate them out, Mantic tend not to update their rules or FAQs too regularly, which means that the rulebook tends to stay relevant. FFG, from something like Star Wars Legion, always set out with digital in mind. So whenever there's a new version of the rules, or there's a tweak, or there's an errata, or something like that, or maybe they change the rules slightly to accommodate some new units that come into the game, they always update their digital rulebook. And I've kind of operated between the two over time. I like to try and get a digital copy of the rules if I can as well, because it's nice to have them when I'm traveling with work and stuff. I don't have to take sort of books with me, heavy books. I can have the copies of them on my phone, so if I can check something quickly while I'm playing. And also when I'm doing things like these live streams, it's quite nice to have the digital book to put up on screen, rather than trying to kind of show pictures of it. Or if I'm trying to kind of like sort of cut something out for a video, it's much easier with the digital books. So I've always kind of had a mix of the two. But since playing Warcry, we've obviously had the first main core rulebook, and we had the FAQ with that, with the errata as well, which changed a few things, especially around sort of cover rule and the height of the terrain and things as well were clarified. We've then since had Monsters and Mercenaries book as well, and there's been some errata for that as well. They missed a few things out in the book, things like the Stormcast Eternal symbols. They got something mixed up. I think it was the move and the what's it called again? Like a defense, basically. They got those two numbers mixed up on the Varan God, I think it was. So there's been a few things in there, and it got me thinking about Games Workshop have said how they're going to do two kind of erratas or designers' commentaries every year for Warcry. We've got the new Tome of Champions coming out soon as well, later this year for 2019. And the more kind of documentation there are for games, whilst it's nice to have those books and it's nice to have all of the background fluff and the stories and all of that stuff, I am starting to think that having the digital versions, assuming that they're updated, and I will caveat that, sorry, I'm just reading some of the chat there about the microphone as well. It's kind of, assuming that they're updated, I think I'd prefer to have the digital versions. Now, there's lots of people been commenting today about why they prefer one over the other, and I'll kind of give you why I think I prefer it. One, I like the way that Star Wars Legion handles it, so that basically there's an update. If there's anything that's changed, it's highlighted. Everybody always has access to the latest rules. There isn't a rule book that has gone basically is no longer viable or is no longer useful. It's designed around everybody having access to the latest information. So I do like that, and from a Warcry perspective, I think I'd like that to be the same thing. There's going to be changes in updates for things like I'd imagine points costs and stat lines as part of this kind of Tome of Champions kind of annual update, I would imagine. And I just think that if there was a digital version of it, it's just much easier for everybody to have access to that same digital version. Now, one thing to caveat again is Star Wars Legion is a free rulebook. The Games Workshop ones aren't, so I do appreciate that kind of separates it a little bit further. But I think let's not talk about costs at the minute. We'll come on to cost later in this conversation. There's a lot of people saying that they're old school and they prefer the books, and I kind of get that. But then some of the reasons people are saying that they prefer the books is that they spend like sort of all day on digital devices and they don't want to kind of like they use gaming to get away from digital devices. And whilst I do appreciate that, if it makes it easier or makes it kind of just more accessible, I don't really think you'd be using them that much in game. I mean, how often do you reference rule books now? If you reference a rule book a lot in a game, maybe then that's more to do with the game and less to do with the kind of whether it's a hard copy or a digital version. So I've put a little bit of kind of stuff out there. I want to talk more about digital rule books because I think there are better ways to do digital rule books than we actually see at the minute. Somebody, I think it's Duffy's just saying, is there a leader in the field for digital copies? There are a few people that I'll come on to who are really kind of pushing the boundaries from a digital application within the game. And I'll come on to them in a little bit, but I'll get back into the chat and just see the kind of comments that people are talking about. People saying that the audio is out of sync. Do you know what it is? I set it up before. Let me try something and tell me if it fixes it, okay? I don't know if I can do this on the fly. Because I did change it before I started. Right, give me 2 seconds. I'm just going to quickly nip to my keyboard, all right? Right, let me know if that's any better. I don't know if it will be. I've put it back to where it was from the last live stream, but I set it up kind of recording video earlier on. We'll see what it's like anyway. Somebody here is saying, Hardcopy saying, good evening all. Today's subject, buying actual rule books or illegally downloading digital rule books. Yeah, there is that. And obviously there's a lot of people will get digital versions of it. But I'd be interested to know how many of you, through whatever means, start with digital rule books but end up buying the hard copies. Yeah, let me know in the chat as well. Has this got any better, or have I made it worse? It is better. Okay, I'll leave that where it is. If the picture should be fine as well. If you do find that the picture quality is not great, just check YouTube settings. Sometimes it doesn't always give you 1080p from the start. Perfect, back in sync. Thank you very much. Yeah, for some reason when I was recording the video, it was out of sync, so I put the microphone in sync with the video, and then now I'm streaming for whatever reason it wasn't. Okay, so where are we at? Yeah. Good evening, blah, blah, blah. Pointing for a few minutes. Hello, James. How are you doing? Christian saying digital books are easier to carry around. I see it's kind of maxing out the microphone a little bit. I'll just turn it down a touch. See if that is any better. We're learning all the time, just kind of learning by doing. Everyone's on about the microphone there. Just saying there, hard copy is also great for nostalgia. I kind of get that. And there is something, Steve mentioned earlier on in the chat, it's like that smell of a new rulebook. It is quite nice to kind of sit and look through that big coloured rulebook. And they definitely have their place. I prefer to read the fluff and the background in an actual book. But when it comes to gaming, so as an example, the new Kings of War 3rd edition rulebook is due out soon. And it is absolutely massive. I wouldn't want to be kind of carting that around and trying to look for rules through that rulebook in an actual game. That's exactly the kind of thing I would prefer to have as a digital version of just the rules. And when I'm talking about digital rule books, I'm not on about kind of necessarily having all of the background fluff in it. I'd almost just like a really kind of streamed down digital version, and not a PDF. I'll come on to that in a bit, but like just a better laid out version of just the rules themselves. Duffy is saying, is there a leader in the field for digital copies? I would say if you look at someone like, I think Weird are really starting to kind of push the kind of envelope a little bit. They've always done free digital rules, which have just been the rules as well, and have missed out. They tend to miss out some of the scenarios, unfortunately, to try and push you into buying the full copy. But they do miss out all of the fluff as well from the gaming. However, they have a new app now, which is really good for kind of building your war bands up, or your crews as they are in Malifaux. And it works really, really well. I'm quite impressed with how that one works. FFG do a really good job now. So Star Wars Legion is a good example of how they do that. They've pushed X-Wing when it went to 2.0. They took all of the points costs off the cards and pushed it into a digital app or an online app. And that way they could update and tweak things without sort of invalidating all of their cards, which I thought was quite a good idea as well. So I think there's a few people starting to kind of really go that way. Tony saying, when it comes to war games, the rules are far more dynamic. If the digital copy is printable, then it'd be worth going digital and printing the crunchy bits. See, that's the whole point for me. You shouldn't have to print it off. It's if the key... I'll tell you what, I'll get onto the bit I was talking about before as well, about digital rule books. So what I don't want is, I don't just want a PDF, like basically like a digital printed version of the rules. To do a rule book properly, you can have searchable rule books. So if you type in a keyword that you're looking for, it will bring up in the book exactly where that is. So if you're looking for a particular rule, it's much quicker and much easier to find it rather than trying to search through the book. You could have videos attached to them as well, which actually sort of short videos, which actually explain certain rules. They're very quickly updated whenever there's a sort of any kind of errata or any changes or points costs or anything like that. So I'm not just talking about having a kind of like a digital paper copy, if you like. I'm on about having interactive digital rules that are updated when there's ever any changes. So people who say they find it easier to search through a rule book, I think that's because you can't kind of like flick through the pages very quickly. But if you could search for something, which you can with some rule books, like GW used to do, and I'm not sure if they still do, they used to do sort of interactive codex for 40k where you could search through and stuff, and it would have keywords kind of highlighted, and if you clicked on that keyword, it would bring up a little box that would tell you the specific rule that's attached to that. That kind of stuff I find is exactly where digital rule books can really push the envelope and really sort of make them worthwhile. Paul saying, I agree the arguments for both sides really, but when you're next to the table, the hard copy is superior. I'm not sure I agree, mate. I don't know if I agree, because somebody was saying about they didn't want to have kind of like phones and tablets lying around on the table because taking up space, but then people have books lying around on the table as well, taking up space. I just find that I think the argument of that it's either easier to search and stuff, I get that, but if the information's there, the information's there, regardless of it really. I personally find it easier to read it, I think, the first time when it's physically in a book. But then I think for referencing and for updates and stuff, I think the digital one seems to go. And one of the reasons I kind of I brought this up was I have the core book for Warcry, which came in the starter set, so I have the paper copy of that, the kind of the hard copy of that, if you like. And now there's a few rules and stuff that have been changed. And I've also got the digital version of Monsters and Mercenaries. And again, some of that's changed. It hasn't been updated yet, but I understand that GW do update some of the digital rule books. They certainly did with the Kill Team stuff. They mentioned on one of the threads on Facebook I was reading, Warhammer Community said that they would be updating it. So I'm expecting that to be updated as well at some point. Busey's in as well, and he's saying that if you buy a hard copy, I feel he should give you a link to a digital download. I'm getting fed up of scanning every page. I get. I'm trying to work out whether that's kind of how the best way to do it. In theory, should rules be free? You know, if all you're getting is the basic rules without all of the background stuff, should they be free? Does that mean that people won't buy the original rule book? It works for some companies, not for others. I do wonder as well whether if you sort of said you buy, I guess if you buy the rule book and you get a free digital copy, it's probably no different to what we've got now, where people download kind of illegal digital copies of the games, whether that's people scanning them and taking photographs, or whether it's legitimately sharing. Because the file that I just bought for Monsters and Mercenaries, I could give that file to anybody else and they'd have the exact same digital version. It's not linked to anything. It's not password protected. It's not linked to a device. It's not. So no wonder digital copies end up online. The only reason that they wouldn't is it because that people haven't shared them with other people. But there's like those digital copies are not locked to a device. You can't tell who's bought them. So no wonder that you get codexes and stuff all over the internet. Paul saying there, true to Busey as well, they do it with music these days. They started to do it with videos a little while ago as well, didn't they? Where if you bought a Blu-ray or something, you got a code for a digital copy of it as well, which I thought was quite good. It seemed to stop happening for a little while. I think Ultraviolet was one of the kind of the system things that they used, and that's been closed down recently. So the kind of infrastructure's there, I guess, to be able to do it. Because they sell these digital versions as well. I thought what was interesting was the Warcry core book is £25. The Warcry digital core book is £20, so it actually was cheaper. And when it comes to Monsters and Mercenaries, the hard copy was £15 in the UK, and the digital copy was $14.99, which I thought was random. So I saved a penny by buying it that way. The only problem being is that you can get online discounts and save like 20% or whatever for physical copies. You can't do that with the digital stuff. Where are we at as well? Oh, my chat's just jumped off the top of the screen, so I'm trying to catch up and see where everything was up to now. Peter said, I wonder why digital books are as expensive as hard copy one. Anyone know how these are related, or whether hard copy is just a print of the digital book? Sometimes they are just a print of the digital book, or sometimes they are a print of the digital book. Sometimes they're kind of expanded and they are an interactive version of. To be honest, who was it that just shared something today? I think it was Cam shared something in the Facebook group today that showed how much of the cost of a digital book versus the cost of a hard copy book, how much of that cost was broken down into kind of retailer margins and how much of it was actually into production of the book itself. And the production cost was relatively small in the grand scheme of things. The majority of these costs tend to go into profits of distributors and retailers and stuff like that. Which is why you see things discounted, like sort of in stores, because people just reduce their cut, I suppose. If you think about sort of video games, digital video games tend to be more expensive than their hard disk sort of counterparts. And one argument for this, what somebody explained to me, was that when it comes to retail, these video game companies want retailers to be able to sell their hardware. So they want to sell the consoles, they want to sell the extra controllers and the cables and all of the different bits and pieces. And if you wipe out an industry of basically of kind of not being able to sell the games, if you like it, where they make probably more money on them, if you make it digital only, is it really in the interest of any of these retailers to be kind of shifting the electronic consoles and stuff? So that's one of the reasons they've tried to keep that kind of high street market alive a little bit. And by undercutting the price of physical discs, you'd pretty much wipe out that as a structure. That's very different when it comes to tabletop gaming, because people still need to buy physical models and paints and all of that kind of stuff. So if you went all digital for rule books, it wouldn't suddenly wipe out kind of retail stores, be that online or actual bricks and mortar as well. Where are we up to? There's loads of chat that keeps jumping around here. Carrie's in as well. Hello, Carrie. How are you doing? Christopher's saying, these days I buy GW rulebooks only when I can get them cheap. Yes, I guess you can buy them cheap online from kind of like discount like retailers and stuff as well, can't you? Paul saying I reference a rulebook a lot because I'm dumb, but you get used to a game very quickly, don't you? The more you play it, the more you get used to it, kind of thing. So, it's more from the updatable part of it, really. I mean, if the rulebook was never going to change, it's purely a choice of do you want the book or do you want the digital copy? It's a bit more black and white. It's kind of a personal choice thing there. But when it comes down to the updates and kind of changing rules and changing point costs and all of that kind of thing, that's when it starts for me to become, should we be starting to embrace kind of the digital age, if you like? Peter's saying, you always wonder why, we've just been talking about that one. Digital has advantages, but should be much cheaper. Should be. I'm not sure. If you're talking about interactive stuff, there's a lot more programming has to go into that over a standard book, to be fair. Everyone's saying it's back in sync and it's better. Robert is in as well. Robert Fanelton. Hello there, Robert. How are you doing? Says, check out Infinity for how they have the rules, not only digital, but interactively with the army builder. Yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing I'm on about, mate. Glenn Griffin saying Blood Bowl had the living rule book. They could essentially do away with new editions if they adopted a living rule book that was continually updated. Yeah, and even the living rule book was a digital rule book, wasn't it? Because it was basically community supported, so it was only ever really a digital file online, and people might choose to print it off. But if they made any changes, it was updated. If that was how Warcry went and it was only ever a digital version, then I know some people would miss the actual books. But if there was a digital version that was always updated, which always had the latest information in it, then at least you've got the choice. Then at least you've got the choice. Carrie's saying prefer hard copy. I have digital copies of rules. I just print out anyway. Yeah, I do find that funny. Sort of like go to all the hassle of printing it out at extra cost as well, especially when the rule book was the digital version was probably the same cost as the normal version anyway. Animus is saying, I think rulebooks are collector's items nowadays for gaming. Nothing can beat a well-designed app to carry on the phone like the Malifaux 3rd edition app. Yes, the Malifaux app is something I've been looking at recently because I was thinking of painting up some Malifaux miniatures and I just wanted to check to see kind of what factions they were all in. So at least if I decide to play the game in the future, I've built a legal faction, if you like. But yeah, they've done a really good job of that new app. Steve saying has no digital rulebooks at all. I have quite a lot of digital sort of stuff where I have, and I'll kind of hold my hand up, I have acquired some digital versions of rulebooks I've already bought, just because when I'm traveling with work, it's quite nice to have them on my laptop or on my phone or whatever, just to try and kind of reference and have a look through. But I've only ever really done that with ones that I've bought myself for games I'm playing. It's only recently that I've started to kind of think about this as more about, do I want to do this more in the future? Rather than kind of filling my shelves with books, do I actually want to just have a digital library of them? I've kind of gone that way quite a bit with Audible, listening to a lot of audio books. So I guess I'm just, as things like sort of phones and kind of like tablets, like iPads and stuff, as their memory, as their storage increases, it's becoming less of an issue now, really. Peter says he normally always starts with a hard copy. Carrie saying digital is more convenient, but I'm old school. I asked a few people today, so what do you mean by old school? Because I bet you don't go and buy DVDs and Blu-rays rather than stream things. I bet you don't go out and buy CDs rather than getting MP3s to iTunes or whatever. So I don't think that you are old school as in you only ever want physical copies of everything. Is it just books? Is it just rule books? What's the reason why you would say you're old school, if you like? Michael Marine said, sounds good, much prefer to have a hard copy, but for travel you can't beat a digital version. Better than a backpack full of weight. Yeah, I completely agree, mate. And for some games, things like 40k, where you have a codex and you have a rule book and you have a, what's it called, chapter approved book, you're starting to carry 3, 4, if you have kind of a bit of a soup army and you need to have 2 or 3 codexes, that becomes more of a kind of a weighty tome of stuff that you're hunting about with you and kind of piling up on a gaming table. So I think digital has its place, but I think there are better ways to do it. And I do agree with the comments of people saying maybe if you got a code to download it when you bought the physical copy as well, that would be a good kind of sort of a good compromise, I think. Carlos Schultz is in. He says, hello, I'm late today. Never fear about being late, buddy. He says, Brazilian greetings for all. For me, here, leave in Brazil, it's nice to have digital because sometimes it's hard to find the books to sell and the taxes for import are high. That's a really good point. I hadn't really thought of. We're kind of blessed in the UK that a lot of these gaming companies are based over here. It's very easy to kind of pick things up, be that online or in kind of gaming stores. You don't really think about the wider implications of actually sort of exporting books out of the UK or from China across to Brazil or to other countries that maybe don't have gaming stores the same way we maybe do in the UK or in the US. That's a really good point, mate. Is that do you find that that's generally what most people do, or do they tend to prefer to pay higher prices to get books imported? Paul says illegal downloads don't make sense unless you're talking about things like Iron Man 3. If you don't pay companies you like, they won't be around too long. Two seconds. I agree with you, mate. I think the other side of it is, and I'm not advocating kind of downloading illegal copies, but I think the companies that have made their rules free online probably get more benefit from people trying their games out and then buying lots of models and spending more money than they would have done, rather than putting the rules behind a paywall of you must buy the rule book to see what you think of the game, and then you must buy all of the kind of bits and pieces. So I do wonder that how many people have gotten into games by borrowing a copy from someone, seeing a digital version that they haven't paid for. Has that opened up the opportunity? So, excuse me. So if you think about things like codexes, if you go and play in a tournament, you have to have a physical copy, I think, of a codex, or certainly like a digital copy on a tablet or whatever. But it needs to be a legitimate kind of GW thing. But I wonder how many people actually decided to start a new army by reading through a free copy of a codex and then deciding to go and buy new models and buy the codex later. Oh, my throat's really dry. Apologies for this. Michael saying he always prefers a hard copy when he's playing. Peter saying, how many rule books could I get onto my Kindle? I think the GW files don't work on a Kindle. I think that might be right. But I'm trying to remember now. Let me have a quick look on my phone and I'll tell you how big the file size is. The file size for, where is it? So it's 37.3 megabytes for the Warcry Monsters and Mercenaries digital file. So it's not a very big file. I've got some digital kind of books, like standard books as well, so some Horus Heresy books. I think I've got sort of Horus Rising here is like 2 megabytes. So it gives you an idea. Most of it comes from sort of the layering of the files and the amount of artwork and stuff in them as well. So they're not they're not huge files. I think off the top of my head, Kindles have like 4 gigabytes of memory storage or something like that. So you'd certainly be able to get plenty of plenty of books on one. Nando's in, he says, I prefer hard copy, but mostly because I buy the collector's editions. I'm kind of completionist. And I get that, buddy, certainly for collecting books. I'm like that with a lot of comic books and stuff as well. I've got digital versions of comic books that I would read, but there's something quite nice about having the actual paper comics and some nice collector's editions as well. But when it comes to physical rules themselves, I'm starting to lean towards digital copies now, I think. But I do like an actual physical book for reading the background and looking at artwork and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm kind of on the fence, and that's what part of this discussion really is, to see how other people are. Yeah, Paul saying loads probably don't take up any much space. Paul Immon's in as well. Hello, buddy. Says, for me, the limiting factor is technology. Digital books usually end up being digital PDFs, and trying to read them is awful. Yeah, I agree, mate. If it's just a digital PDF, I could take or leave it, really. I much prefer it when they're a bit more high quality, and they've got some kind of interactive features as well. Being able to kind of click on a keyword and give you the explanation of that is really, really powerful, and it's really useful. You could even have rule books where there's an explanation of how a rule works, and if you click on it, it would give you a little 30-second video of exactly how it actually works in reality and stuff. Getting to that level, I think, is down the line, but it just shows when those digital rule books really do fall over into a much more kind of useful environment. Paul saying you get them immediately delivered and they're about £7. Yeah, being able to get them immediately as well is a big thing as well. Devin Smithwick's in. Hello, buddy. He says it would be nice if they made a version that would work on Kindle. Strictly rules and no fluff. I agree, mate. Christian's saying he's got a 32 gig iPad currently running over 500 books. Paul saying he's got Gaslands and Rangers on ebook for nothing compared to the hard copy versions. Yeah, I think a lot of the prices vary depending upon the companies. I think something like sort of Rangers of Shadow Deep, I think, came out as a digital version before it was ever a hard copy. I think the first versions were digital and you could print them off yourself. And I think at that point, maybe they started to do some printed versions. So depending upon the company, I think GW are probably an exception in this. If you think many companies like Mantic do a lot of their rules free digitally online, they tend to just be like a kind of almost a PDF type thing. However, they do them for free. I know that the Malifaux 3rd edition rules you can pick up for free. The new Marvel game, the Crisis Protocol, from whatever they're called, that new Atomic Mass games, their rules are free online. The Batman Miniatures games rules are free online from Night Models. There's quite a lot that basically give you the opportunity to read those rules, to try out the game, and they might be streamlined versions of the rules. They might not give you the scenarios, they might not give you the full details, but they give you enough to kind of let you decide if that game's for you or not. Neil Anderson is in as well. Hello, buddy. How are you doing? He says, I loved how quickly I get stats for 40k weapons with digital codex. That's kind of my point, mate. I think when they're done really well, people start to see the benefits. When they're just a digital PDF, people hate the fact that you can't like sort of flick through where you flick through a book and find your page quickly. You can't flick through a screen as quick as that. But if you're searching for stuff with a more interactive version, it makes a big difference. Gary saying I play games with people who have digital rules and it seems that their noses are in the phones all the time and it seems clunky. It's probably no different to you having your nose in the book. It's just it feels more acceptable. I'm completely against people just kind of playing with their phones while you're kind of playing a game kind of thing. But I think if they're done right, I think it would actually speed things up. Robert's saying, check out how Corvus Belly does Infinity. It's a living wiki and it links to the army builder. Yeah, again, brilliant. They do a really good job of it. Chris is saying that he's still doing enhanced rule books as well. Paul says you can put bookmarks in iBooks and Kindle, but ain't nobody got time for that. It's you can put bookmarks in, but that's no different to putting like little sticky sort of tabs into pages to find certain things and stuff, really. You've also got the benefit as well of being able to have it in multiple places, so you can have it on your phone, you can have it on your tablet, you can have it on your PC. So depending upon where you are, what device you've got, it's got multiple kind of things. Where are we at? Oh, the chat is jumping around all over tonight. I can't keep up with this one tonight. Where are we at? God, the chat's gone nuts. For some reason, it's jumped off and loads of chats just come through, and I can't catch up with it all now. I'll just have to dive back in here as well. So Tony Howell saying, agree Andy, Privateer Press do a very good digital rule and game app. Yeah, they're, is it called War Store or something like that? That they do for War Machine is really, really good. Red Rose Wargaming saying, I have all the D&D rule books, but I have to say that these days it's far faster for me to search D&D Beyond when looking for rules. Digital wins for speed, I find. That's my point, mate, I think, is definitely when it's done correctly, it is much faster. If it's just a PDF that you can't search through to find what you want, then it then becomes actually a bit of a negative, really. Glyn says, forgetting your phone or tablet is a bigger loss than a hardback book. I get that, mate, but you take your phone with you now, don't you? If you go to a game, you'll still have your phone with you. Phones are getting bigger these days as well, the size of the screens. So you'll have your phone with you. Like, how many times have you left your phone at a gaming store? You're less likely to kind of get your phone mixed up with somebody else's than you are to get your boot mixed up with somebody else's. I hear a lot more people forgetting to pick up their rule books or somebody else picking up their rule book and taking it home than I ever do of people losing their phones. Tony saying, the Privateer Press one. King John's in. Hello, King John. He says, hey guys, glad to make a live stream. Physical media is good when you have no internet, though I love the keyword function. I also agree it shouldn't be online based. It shouldn't rely upon the internet. It should be a physical copy that's held on the device, be that on an iPad or a phone or whatever. It shouldn't be a kind of an internet based thing because you can't guarantee you're going to get a signal. Tim Kelly's in. Hello, buddy. Juan says, the main reason I prefer GW hardbacks is because their digital versions of codexes are only a few dollars cheaper. For that kind of price difference, I'll continue to choose hardbacks. Yeah, the prices. It's funny. We put value on having a physical copy over having a digital copy, even though they provide the same information. It took a long time for people to kind of get their heads around having to buy in MP3s rather than CDs. A lot of people used to buy CDs and then rip them to an MP3 player from the actual CD. These days, you wouldn't dream of it. I think it'll take time, but I think there has to be a benefit to the physical. There has to be a benefit to the digital copy over the physical copy before they can almost justify that kind of at least similar prices, I think. Big Mac and Fries, hello there. He says, good evening and new to the channel. We're very kind and warm welcome to you. Yeah, Juan is talking about War Room 2 from Privateer Press. That was the one I was trying to remember the name of it. It is really good. It also syncs up, doesn't it? So if both players are using it, you can see each other's cards. You can track wounds and stuff as well. It's quite well done actually from a digital version. Everyone's saying hello to Big Mac. Brian Schmidtson says, hope you're doing well, buddy. I'm just kind of getting over the end of a cold, mate. So my throat's a bit dry and my nose is a bit nasally. So apologies if I keep coughing or keep having a drink. But yeah, I'm not too bad other than that, mate. Steve says, can you resale a digital copy of the rules? To be honest, mate, it's a bit of a dodgy area because in theory you could. I could sell you, I could give you a copy of Monsters and Mercenaries book now because I've bought it, I've paid for it, but it's just a digital file on my computer. I could email it to you. I could send it to you on a zip drive. So technically you could sell it. Whether somebody would buy it is a different matter. The other side of it is, I don't think I've ever sold a rule book. I don't think I've ever sold. So for me personally, that it doesn't make much difference. When it comes to video games, I tend to buy disc copies rather than digital copies because A, they're cheaper and 2, I can trade them in. But that's because I've kind of completed them. I'm finished with them. I tend not to do that with gaming books. Paul saying retail won't stock the stuff unless they can sell it cheaper. Big Mac and Fry saying digital is a rip-off, still asking full price on Xbox for all 360 games. Yeah, I agree with that. It's especially when the only time I ever buy digital stuff is when there's a sale. So I bought, as an example, Blood and Truth on PS4 recently because it was half price in the sale for PlayStation VR. I probably wouldn't have paid the full £60 for it, kind of thing. Noxie's in, just getting some painting done tonight as well. Flying Mammal is in. Hello, Ruth. How are you doing? Says we're listening while doing stuff, so can't chat, but see you at the weekend. Looking forward to it. Can't wait to see you both. Peter's saying, when it comes to army books and codex books, most of the key unit information is included in the how to build booklet, so you pay mostly for fluff. I know what you mean, but it doesn't necessarily have special rules and stuff, though, does it? And you are paying for fluff. I agree, you are paying for fluff. Rob Marshall says, hello, I'd say digital should be cheaper because once it's produced, it's easy to copy. Yeah, and there's no kind of having to kind of decide on how many copies to print. I agree it should be cheaper. And if you look at what happened with sort of PC games with Steam, they did a really good job of dropping the price, putting them all online digitally, and kind of setting the market value. It really did combat sort of piracy within PC gaming. It's a shame there isn't something, I think somebody's mentioned it and maybe I skipped over it, but almost paying for a subscription to have all of the books, paying like a monthly subscription to have access to all of the books. Like, would that be something that would interest people? You know, would you pay 99 pence a month to have access to all 40k codexes? You know, something like that. Where are we up to? Chris is saying I bought a Codex, Orcs and Battletome Gloomspite Gits second hand. They both look brand new for $45 US. Yeah, I guess if people are selling their armies and stuff, I guess you would be selling them on, yeah. And Paul saying there, agreeing with Busey, if you pay 20 quid for a book, there's no reason why they shouldn't give you the digital one. It's a bit greedy. I wouldn't say it was greedy, but like at the end of the day, if they were going to do a proper job of digital rule books, there's still a lot of work that needs to go into it that wouldn't go into the original rule book. I've got no problem with them selling them for a fair price. I just don't necessarily agree they should be the same price. But then by the same stretch, I think books are quite expensive. Sort of £25, £30 for a book. It's quite expensive, really. Horrid Person is in as well. Hello, Gene. So I find large blocks of text delivered electronically horrible. I like a book in my hand. I can flip through the pages and write in the margins if I'm so inclined. You can technically still write in the margins in a digital book as well, but if it's just physically between kind of, I prefer physical books over digital books, I think that's much more just down to preference. I'm sort of angling this more around there. Have we reached a point now where the way games get updated, like the way PC games or Xbox or PlayStation games get updated with patches and with errata and with extra levels and all of that kind of stuff? Are we at a point now where we need to start kind of embracing the kind of the digital world a little bit more when it comes to rule books and rules specifically? Horrid Person says, if you leave a book lying around, most people won't steal them. Phones and devices, on the other hand. I think you're playing in the wrong places, Gene, if that's your worry. Personally, for me, when I'm playing, I still put my phone down. I don't want my phone in my pocket if I'm sitting around. I'll still put my phone down on the side of the table and stuff. That kind of stuff doesn't really... You know, if we're starting to worry about phones going missing and iPads going missing and that kind of stuff, you know, what's to stop somebody stealing your kind of like your models and bits and pieces as well? I personally don't see that as a big deal, because I don't worry about it when I'm everywhere else. If I'm sitting in a coffee shop and I put my phone down, I wouldn't get up and walk away and leave it behind in the same way I wouldn't do that in a gaming store. Red Rose is saying real digital masters don't even own models. We just use digital printers on our phones and use those. We use digital STL 3D printer files on our phones and use those. Pete saying Audible gives me thoughts. GW subscription service. I knew I'd read it somewhere, buddy. Yeah, it does. I do wonder whether something like that would work. Carrie says, I don't know why I need a printed copy. I still buy DVDs and CDs. It's interesting that because I haven't bought a DVD. I don't even have a DVD player. I don't have a CD player at home anymore now. Everything I do is digital. So maybe I'm just more inclined because that's the way my brain works now. I'm just so much more used to being like I'm kind of bought into that kind of Apple ethos of my MacBook and my phone and my iCloud account and everything syncing and my Apple Watch and being able to have everything like linking between devices, that kind of stuff. Maybe it's just because that's my mindset that I'm more accepting of moving digitally towards a digital rulebook, if you like. Neil is saying 40k chapter approved is too much faff to update the codex. I don't. Did they put the point costs in the codexes still? I can't remember. It's been so long since I read a 40k codex. The point costs are in chapter approved, aren't they? And the rules are in the codexes. But do they still put rules in the codex? I forget now. Jeremy is in as well. Hello, Jeremy. Says I don't have to make sure my battery is charged on my physical rulebook before I go play. Yeah, and I get that. I mean, there's other people have mentioned that as well about phones dying and stuff. But in the grand scheme of things, are batteries that poor these days? I mean, my phone lasts all day with me playing on it and messing about with it and stuff like that. If I'm gaming all afternoon and not using my phone, it would last kind of well into the next day. If you're using it as like iPads and tablets and stuff have much like sort of longer battery lives as well. Is battery life really that big an issue? Do we see people in gaming sort of using their iPads dying in the middle of games now? I'm not really sure. Paul saying dislike physical media because it's pretty unnecessary, but for rulebooks I want the quick flicking access. Yeah, I do get that, but sometimes trying to find what you're looking for in a rulebook can take a lot more time flicking through if you're not sure where to look for it than it would be to search for a certain keyword or search for a certain passage. Tony's in as well. Hello, Tony. Paul saying he's old school. I do like to own physical books, irrespective of the digital piece of crap, but I also buy CDs and DVDs because I like to own the physical media. Yeah, I used to do that. I moved house about 2.5 years ago and ended up just giving pretty much my entire DVD collection to charity, just to put into kind of like a charity box, because it never got played. The only DVD player I've got left in the house now is in my PlayStation, and it's just not. I don't watch DVDs. I stream Amazon. I stream Netflix. I rent movies. From like Rakuten and places like that, or from Amazon. I just don't feel the need to have sort of physical copies of stuff anymore now. The only reason I do it with video games, as I mentioned before, is because I can kind of trade them in when I finish them, and more because the fact is that they tend to be cheaper. Tony saying, I think I proved that I was proper old school on Discord the other night. Now we're talking about interactive apps. This old dog could be sold on that. Yeah, it's. I think until you've seen one of the interactive rule books, maybe I am not, as I mentioned before, I am not suggesting that we should just have kind of pretty rubbish PDFs that basically is, they become a clunky book basically. But the really good stuff, the stuff that you can search through and the stuff that you can click on it, it'll give you a more in-depth explanation of that particular rule. That stuff is what I'm trying to kind of advocate here. Paul saying the other problem with digital media is if it's DRM protected, you don't technically own anything. The product can be switched off and you may no longer be able to access it. This has happened. It has happened, mate, but it doesn't seem to be that the case with the digital rule books that I'm downloading at the moment. Like I say, the GW one doesn't have any DRM on it. Busey saying, I feel like I'm getting more into my money with a physical copy rather than a file hidden away on a laptop. I think that is something that a lot of people have kind of taken a long time to get their heads around as well. That idea that I physically own something, I can see it, therefore I've got my money's worth, as opposed to I've got this digital thing. It's funny, isn't it? I think that's going to take some time to break down. I think the generation behind us are much more comfortable with that kind of thing. Neil saying Blood Angels Codex is too far out of date. New Space Marine Codex is more up to date. Yeah, if they're not updating them, that's a shame, really. It would be good to see them being updated, especially if they're kind of interactive ones and stuff. I think Chapter approved basically with the points costs every year. I can see Warcry being exactly the same thing, basically, that they will have points costs and maybe stat lines as that annual update in this Tome of Champions. Where is it? Paul saying, Busey, the amount of money I spent on digital music I have lost on broken laptops is diabolical. You might have lost it, but like, so for example, with, say, iTunes, it's always there, isn't it? You can always go back into your account and download it from the cloud. The book I bought from GW, for the Monsters and Mercenaries one, if I sign back into my Warhammer account, it tells me all of my digital purchases that are there, so I can just go and download it again. If I download stuff from, say, Humble Bundle, I remember signing up to a Humble Bundle thing a while ago that gave me a whole host of Warhammer 40k Horus Heresy novels, and they're all on my phone. They're on my Kindle as well. But if I sign back into that account, they're all there for me to download again. Animus is saying one of the early smart choices of GW was to give free core rules and war scrolls from AOS so anybody can try out the game. Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't roll that out more, to be fair. They've kind of moved away from that a little bit now with AOS. They still have the war scrolls online. You still need to buy the General's Handbook if you want the points costs, however. Yeah, Chris is talking about the requirement for having printed books for tournaments, and if the argument is because people download them illegally, then you better damn well show me the receipt for your hard copy. I'm not sure. I don't think you need to kind of have a physical copy. I think if it's a digital copy, it just needs to be a legitimate one, basically. Like you say, there's nothing to say you haven't stolen the book in the same way. I think it's these kind of dodgy, kind of photographed, scanned versions that they're probably more worried about. Gene saying a book isn't some hipster affection like vinyl records. It's practical, durable solution that isn't dependent on a power supply. Yeah, and I get that, but I'm talking about there's things that you can do with digital rule books that you could never do with a standard book. And when it comes to rules, when it's referencing things, think about like sort of like when PCs became a thing at home and everybody got a copy of the Encyclopedia Britannica on a CD or something like that. It was that next step. It was that being able to search for something. Like look at the internet, being able to just go and search for the thing you want versus going to a library and trying to look for it on the shelf somewhere. I'm not saying books don't have their place and that it's not nice to have one and sit and read one. I'm just saying when it comes to rules and when rules get updated and when rules get changed and tweaked and points costs change, that there is a place for digital rule books now. And if companies embrace them and do them properly, I think more people would see the benefit in them as well. Is that Eliath? Says, greetings, first time catching you live. Thank you very much. He says, digital copies are convenient, but there's something about thumbing through the books that makes all the difference. Yeah, and I agree with that. If we're sitting, especially when I'm reading fluff and looking at the artwork and stuff, there's something quite relaxing, especially in a digital age. There's something quite relaxing about sitting physically reading a book. But yeah, rules specifically, this is what I'm talking about. Rules specifically, I would probably still buy a fluff book, or I'd still buy a hardback copy of the rules just to read that and to experience the book if I could get a digital version that was auto-updating with the latest releases, with the latest kind of errata, and it was searchable, and it had more kind of interactivity to it. Everybody keeps talking about batteries dying. It's not like we're playing out in the field here. You know, there are still plenty of places you can plug your phone in and charge it up. You can have battery packs and all that kind of stuff. I honestly don't get like battery dying as a reason that we should never move that way kind of thing. Skullmunch is saying there, I use books to transport minis between tables. Wouldn't be able to on a phone. In that case, mate, I will give you that one, definitely. Skullmunch is saying if you're looking at your phone for a rule and you get a notification, you could be distracted. Yeah, you could do, but turn it off. Turn it on to flight mode. Turn notifications off if that's the case. That's no different now to if you're looking through your book and you get a notification on your phone and you get distracted by it. People have a bit chat about the weekend there as well. Clayton saying 99 pence to GW, £99 more. Like they used to do something with Age of Sigmar where it was 99 pence a month, I think, and that was for a link. Was that to their? Was that for their war like the army builder, where you could sort of save and print off your army lists if you subscribed to their army builder? I think I seem to remember paying that a while ago. Andy Smith saying, how's everyone been? I've been to Element Games for the first time over the weekend. It's ace. Can we have more Infinity and Bolt action content, please? No, mate. I don't play either of them at the minute, so no. Not from me anyway. I'm sure you'll find it out elsewhere, though. Paul saying, how much is a GW PDF? The digital version of the Monsters and Mercenaries book was $14.99. Their physical book was £15. For the rule book, it was £25 for the like sort of hardback copy, and it was £20 for the digital version. But yeah, it tends to be the same price in general. Gene saying maybe we should be designing better games out of the gate. The industry love revising and adding for profit. This is not about adding for profit, though. I mean, these FAQs and these erratas do not make them any money. And there is not a game that's out there that doesn't need some kind of tweaking. I'm not kind of sort of. This is not like just about Games Workshop. Every game that's out there needs some adjusting and needs some tweaks. There are no such things as perfect games. As new things get released, the balance goes out of the window again. I think GW tend to have more focus shone on them because more people play their games. Therefore, games get more robustly kind of play tested once they hit the kind of the main mass market more quickly than, say, a game from Warlord or a game from kind of, I'm trying to even think now, a game from, let's say, Modiphius, let's say Fallout. It's going to take a lot longer for Fallout to be played by the amount of people that will completely test every combination of every rule, versus if you release a new codex for 40k, and that will get played infinitely much more times. But yeah, I don't think any company basically gets it right first time. TJ Casey and the points are in the codex. They are in the codex, aren't they? But then obviously then the chapter approved that comes out after that will sort of like, so what will happen is chapter approved comes out and then any codex after that will have their own points in until the next chapter approved comes out, and it'll kind of sort of supersede them. TGK said, if GW would commit to keeping the digital versions updated, I'd move to digital. Yeah, and I think that's the big question. I'm still kind of mixed about whether GW are updating them or not. They have for Kill Team. They said they were going to do it for Warcry, but they haven't yet, so I'm not really sure. Paul saying his phone lasts till about lunchtime. That's probably more to do with your phone, mate, or what you're doing on it. Busey saying physical rule books with QR codes that you can scan on complex rules, which take you to an online video. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's... It's a compromise, isn't it? It's one of them things. It might take a little bit more organising. Digital stuff is just easier to update on the fly, for example. Skullman says, what if you had where was that? Oh, it's jumped off. What if you had a day at the zoo taking loads of photos of those cute pandas and then you have a game of Warcry, your battery might not last then? The pandas tend to be hiding away, mate, so you wouldn't be taking loads of photos of them. Clayton says, problem with anything digital is when they change support for older formats, nobody takes my analog stuff away from me. Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that they would sort of necessarily take this away from you either. It's this wouldn't change anything. You would still have the choice to update to the latest things. I'm not suggesting that it would kind of automatically update if you didn't want it to, and you could always save a copy of it, for example. But yeah, I just think that now a lot of games bring out errata, they bring out changes. There's kind of new ways to play things, it's all about kind of just being able to keep up with that, because then people complain about, oh, I don't want them bringing out all this errata because now I have to change my book. Now my book's out of date. It's not the latest thing. It doesn't have the latest sort of rules in. So it's that middle ground, really. What's more important? Paul saying there, moving house is why I hate the physical media. Yeah, I give CDs and DVDs. I got rid of so much stuff to charity, mate, when I moved. I couldn't believe how much stuff I had. Paul saying, get Tabletop Simulator on Steam. Paul says, I nearly got it in the sale, but chickened out. We'll do next time. Yeah, it's not bad actually. It's pretty cool for some stuff. Marco says, as it stands at the moment, GW manuals, PDF or EPUB are exactly like the printed version. Should be given out for free. They're not all like that though, mate. That's the difference. They're not all like that. They still do some interactive codexes and stuff. People Paul said about true about re-downloading, but when you've got several different accounts and passwords, that's a different thing if you can't remember your passwords and stuff. Christian saying, don't forget to hit the like button. Yes, please do. That'll be very kind of you all. Paul saying, I don't know, mate, 15 quid for a PDF is a bit rich for me. 750 is more to my taste. For me, mate, it doesn't really make any difference whether it's a PDF or whether it's a digital version or whether it's a real copy. I'm paying for what's included in it. I'm paying to read it. I'm paying to get the rules that I need, to get the stats that I need. Am I any worse off with a digital version over a kind of a physical version? I'm still paying for the information. Whether you see them as the same value is a personal choice, but you know, I'm still getting the information that I need at the same price. Paul says, let's see how far the digital copies get you when we get to the Fallout days. To be honest, mate, if we get to nuclear war, I don't think I'm going to be worrying about my physical copies of books on my shelf, that's for sure. Gene saying some companies do it right. Take the Rangers of Shadow Deep. If you order a hard copy, they give you an electronic copy for free. I think that was because they only ever used to do digital versions originally as well. Daniel saying, good afternoon to everybody. Hello, Daniel. How you doing? And Gene saying they had small publisher, all run through Wargames Vault Online. Yeah, and I guess that's the thing, where they're just starting up with small publishers as well. They need to, especially with the kind of, and I don't mean this kind of derogatory as well, but games that reach a smaller audience, if they decide to sell the Shadows of Ranger, Shadows of Ranger Deep, or Rangers of Shadow Deep even, if they decide to sell that for 25 quid, you know, people probably wouldn't bother with it, but you know, do it cheaply or give it to people for free with a bit of an introduction or something. It's a little bit different. GWs charge those prices because people will pay it. It's, yeah, you know, we're not getting into this discussion. Isn't about GW pricing model. This is more about are we reaching a point now where digital rule books are or should be more useful. Yeah, Daniel's saying there as well, if you buy a physical book, you should get a free download. Adam is in as well. Good morning to you, mate. He's only ever bought physical copies. Do the digital versions actually get updated? They do for some companies, mate. Some companies only do digital versions and they always update them and they highlight what the changes are. Some GW digital copies get updated. Some haven't. It seems to be not kind of, doesn't seem to be any kind of real plan to that at the minute as to why some do and some don't. My argument, basically, or my conversation today is really about if they got updated and if they were more interactive, is that the future? Is that the way we kind of should go? Cool. Right. So we've talked that to death a little bit now. I'm going to move on to something else that Marco shared with me today, and I'm going to flick across to this. And this was an announcement from Monolith. And I'm going to flick across to my screen as well so I can read the same one. And this was an article from Monolith. Monolith are the games company that made the Batman board game, and they also made Mythic Battles and some other games like that. And what they're suggesting here, and it's quite a long post. I'm not going to read the details. I'll just show you the nice picture at the front there. Essentially, what they're doing is they're bringing something out called Beyond the Monolith. And it's a project which basically is going to shape the future strategy of they're going to shape the future strategy of their business. And what they're saying is that they're going to bring out an expansion to Conan in January, and in the months ahead they're going to provide more information. But essentially, what Beyond Monolith project is, it's kind of similar to generic role-playing systems that are basically suitable for a variety of themes and settings, or like home video game consoles and their games. In this way, we hope to separate the game engine, which is like the hardware, if you will, from various settings and themes. Simply put, the goal is to provide what we're tentatively calling an engine box, so gamers will not have to buy an entire system every time, but rather just the material for their chosen theme. So what they're essentially saying is they're going to have a core system, a core engine that their games for the future are going to be based around. So in the same way the Conan game and the Batman board game both use that same kind of game engine, if you like, and the Batman game is a reskin of the Conan game. Certain things in those games will be generic between both. So dashboards that you put kind of cards into, maybe certain dice that you would use between both games, maybe even certain boards that you would use between both games, maybe certain cards that you would use. And the idea being that when they release a new game, which will be part of that kind of game world engine, you will then only buy the bits that you need and not have to buy the entire game. And a lot of this is what they're saying about is people buy stuff on Kickstarter, they end up with 200 miniatures for a game that hardly sees the table, and then another game comes out from the same company. So if you think about people, like think about the different Zombicide games, for example, from Simon. People then buy the next game, but have to buy everything again from scratch. So they have to buy the boards, the cards, the dice, the new miniatures, the new rule book, everything else. So what they're suggesting is they're going to start releasing games that use the same game engine and the same rules, and they're essentially going to reskin it. Now, I wonder what you kind of think about this, because I've got mixed feelings. I can kind of see what they're doing. They're almost trying to tie people into their kind of ethos, if you like. But by the same stretch, do you really want to just keep playing a reskinned version of the same, essentially the same game? So what's your thoughts about that kind of stuff? It's something that I don't really think's been tried anywhere before. It's quite a new idea, I think. I mean, I know they're saying it's like buying a PlayStation 4, which is your main engine, and then just buying a new game when you want a new game. But it's not exactly like that, is it? Because if the core rules, the core mechanics are exactly the same, you're essentially buying the same game every time. It's almost like only ever buying FIFA and then an NHL game and an NFL game that all essentially work around the same kind of sort of graphics, if you like, or something like that. Not a great kind of analogy, but you get what I mean. Where are we at here? So Barrington Daly's in, said he finally got the GW EPUB to work on his Kobu, and it works well. Barrington is saying Conan, 80 figures for £40, great value. I think the thing with Conan is it was really expensive when it first came out, and it was the reason why Batman went Kickstarter only, was because Monolith said that they made no money at all on Conan by selling it in retail. Paul says, I'm confused. Yeah, he kind of gets it now. So Paul Inman there saying he's a big fan of Monolith, so I'm excited to see where this goes. I think it's more... It's definitely... The worry for me is that it ends up just being the same game reskinned, and that doesn't... It feels like basically... I get what they're trying to do, but I don't want to just keep playing the same game with a different miniatures in it. Sean saying hard pass from him. Paul saying not sure about how he feels about it. Paul saying I'm going to spend hard money on a game. I want a new game. Yes, I agree with that. Barrington saying people keep playing D&D, and I think this is where they're kind of coming from with this. I think the difference is with D&D, it's less about, and I say this because I've just recently picked this up as well. So I am interested in D&D, and I might even touch on that in a second. I think the difference with D&D is the core rules or the core engine is not the reason you play a D&D. You play D&D because you're having an experience with a group of people that you are kind of having fun playing the game. I don't think anybody would put the amount of hours into a board game, playing that same game over and over again, as they would put into D&D. And I think that's the difference. You can buy all of the different kind of bolt-on expansions for D&D, the different quests, the different stories, the monster books, all of those kind of different bits and pieces. But I think when it comes to a board game, this is it's very different, and I think that's what the difference is. Gene is saying, I think it's lazy ass scam. They're offering dull ass stuff. I can see what they're thinking of, but I'm not sure how successful this could be as well. Skullmunch is saying, I like new games, not reskins. Yeah, I like to play games that are very, very different to each other. I don't want to just play the same generic game over and over again. Steve says, isn't this just GURPS RPG-ish? Yes. It does work well for RPG, but that's because people, like I said before, it's because it's the experience that you have playing an RPG. A board game is a very different experience unless it's a very RPG-like board game. So, for example, can you imagine if, and this is probably not a good example, but can you imagine if Warhammer 40,000 and Age of Sigmar had exactly the same rules and used exactly kind of the same profiles, but you just used different miniatures? Would people still want to play both? Or are they looking for something very different between them? And maybe it doesn't relate well to kind of tabletop games from a miniatures point of view. But for me, I need to know more about it. But for me, it feels like I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to save people money by saying, well, you've already got this really nice plastic dashboard for all your cards to go in. You don't need to buy it again for the next game. You'll buy like a kind of like a core set, which is the kind of the engine of the game. And then you can use that core set for any of their subsequent games. So I do kind of see what they're trying to do. Skullmunch saying, for example, Batman and Conan are the same game. I'd only ever play Batman. Yeah, exactly the same here, mate. The Conan theme wasn't really for me. I wasn't that interested. Batman was an improved version of Conan where they improved a few things as well. But the Batman theme was what made me buy into it. I wouldn't then just go and buy, let's say, a Marvel game that played exactly the same as the Batman game. And I think they're going to need to be very different, but use the same key components. That's the only way I think this would work. But one of the things it says in the document is about how once you learn the rules once, you'll know them for all of their other games. So yeah, I'm not so sure. Paul saying having the same engine's okay with something like Underworld, but not if you're bringing out Batman, Hellboy, The Simpsons. Yeah, I do wonder if it will limit the games by having to make them fit an engine rather than allowing them to kind of improve and really kind of sort of innovate and come up with something new. Gene saying good for you. Simon York says D&D has one theme with slight variations in the form of setting, either official, third party, or homebrew. Yeah, but again, I think it's just, and this goes for all RPGs, not just D&D. I think it's about the experience. It's about the kind of the shared experience between the group. If that was the case for board games, groups who play board games together would just play that one game, wouldn't they? They'd just keep buying all of the expansions for that one game, and they wouldn't buy 30 different board games to have different experiences. Paul saying he plays D&D because it's what his GM plays, but he hates the D&D rules. He's got preferences of rule sets, and D&D is not one of them. Simon saying he'd be in for Conan, at least he didn't get the first time. I'm not sure if they're selling it again, mate, or if they're just selling an expansion. I assume they might. I mean, Conan, to be fair, you can pick up at retail. Conan went to retail stores and is available to buy online. It's just Batman that wasn't. Paul is saying games play differently based on the stats and abilities of the units, which is not part of the rules engine. Yeah, I just don't see how we'd keep the same rules, reskin it, and then make it feel like a different game. I am happy to be proved wrong, but I must say on initial inspection it doesn't excite me. Steve saying AOS and 40k are the same, aren't they? Yeah, that was why I started as kind of snigger when I said it. I think they're becoming closer because I think they're learning from each other. But yeah, they're not exactly the same game. And Paul saying they also have 3 engines at the moment. Yeah, but I think their idea is they're only going to have one going forward. That's essentially what they're saying. Tony is saying there, tabletop RPG is about getting round a table with a bunch of people making friends. Going off topic and just having a laugh. Yeah, and that's what and I think the D&D rules or whatever it is, whatever rules you use from a RPG, they're there just to kind of to shape or to give you a framework to build upon. Board games are different. Board games rely upon playing by the rules. Board games rely upon the theme being set by what you can do within the rules. Not being a loose thing to kind of hang your adventure on, if you like. Paul says, what I like about GW is knowing they've had all these guys there play testing it and balancing it. That's what I pay some of my money for. I'm not sure that's always the case, mate, to be fair. I'm sure they're a big company, but I'm sure they don't have a lot of play testers. I don't think you're paying more money for games having been play tested very heavily. I think you're paying more money for a big corporation and you're paying for probably better quality in a lot of instances as well. Margot saying, Lucky Duck Games have also started with their Destiny model. I can foresee more themes and content developed around the same system. Yeah, I thought that was the case as well. The Time of Legends one they've done for Joan of Arc, haven't they? I just hope it's not I know why they do it, because then they only have to develop a system once and then they can keep working on it and tweaking it, and it actually makes less work for them as well. The problem is that core engine and that core system needs to be bloody good, or your entire business model down the line, your future of your company is based upon how solid that game engine is. If that game engine isn't very good, you can kiss goodbye to all of your future games, because no amount of putting a nice skin on it is going to make it a good game. And that's the worry for me. And Batman is a prime example, I think, of a game that's probably just that little bit more overcomplicated than it needs to be. Christian is saying to Tony there, depends on who you're at the table with. Table is sometimes quite difficult to play at, but you're right, that's how it should be. Yeah, that's definitely the case, mate. But I guess that would be the case on a board game as well, if you're playing with people that maybe you don't always get on with. Gene saying the forefront of an RPG is the storytelling. The setting, the campaign is the crux of the experience. Board games are driven by rules. Yeah, exactly, just what I was saying, really. Barrington saying, but you keep playing 40k, people keep buying plastic for the same rules with a few tweaks. They do, but again, so we've got to separate here board games and miniatures games, war games, if you like. People like to buy into war games to build their miniatures up, to build their armies up, to paint them, to play, and to know that by the time they've spent 6 to 12 months building an army, that game will still be roughly or essentially the same game when they started building that army up. Board games are very, very different. Board games, people want to buy lots of different board games to get lots of different experiences, because you buy the board game, you unbox it and you play it. You don't have to paint the miniatures. You don't have to kind of list build and kind of spend 6 months planning out in advance. Trying to get you tied into one system of board games and keep coming back and just buying a re-theming of it and a reskin of it, for me personally, doesn't interest me. It might for some people, but for me, like I say, that engine needs to be really, really good. Otherwise, the entire business model falls over on it. Paul is in the article seems to say they continue to support the Mythic Battles engine at least. So I think they'll have 2 engines. Yeah, it wasn't really clear when I read it the way they were talking about it. They do reference Conan and Batman in it as part of this engine thing, so they might still be supporting those games, but I'm not sure they're going to reskin them for the future. I think the Batman and the Conan engine is what they're going to be using to build on. Paul says, I mean, when they release a new game, Warcry, Underworld's, Kill Team, whatever, it's not built around the same engine. No, exactly not, mate. I mean, Warcry is a prime example of that. It's a completely new engine, if you like. They might be using the idea of attacking and kind of wounds and stuff, but the rules are very different. That's why a lot of people kind of didn't like Warcry or all really liked Warcry, was because it was something very different from Games Workshop. If they just only ever kept one rule system and just kept changing the kind of the skin over the top of it, I don't think people would necessarily. I guess it's different because we're talking about miniatures games again as well. So some people, there are very few people who play all Games Workshop miniatures games. So maybe they could get away with having that one skin, that one engine, and reskinning it. Just for board games, I think it's a risky move, but time will definitely tell. Time will tell. Clayton says, anyone else getting severe deja vu? I'm not sure why, mate. Paul saying 6 to 12 months to build a warband, and Steve saying 12 months to paint an army. You mean 1 weekend? Yeah, we're not all like you, mate. We can't all build it in 1 weekend. Simon York says, I haven't played it. Is Kill Team its own system or the same as Necromunda? Nothing like Necromunda, mate. It's kind of it's a tweaked version of standard 40k, 8th edition 40k. Stat lines, I think, are essentially similar. The activations are a little bit different, but it still has kind of roll to shoot, roll to wound, roll to hit, roll to wound, roll to save, the same kind of things as 40k does as well. So they're quite similar to Kill Team is similar to 40k. It definitely is kind of grounded in 8th edition 40k, but it's not exactly the same. Paul saying there's a statement saying they want to add a second life option to each of their game systems, not just the THS Conan Batman rules. I don't actually know what Second Life is, mate. I don't. Is that basically what the Mythic games are? Daniel Cusack says Kill Team and Necromunda are both different. One more pull out and play the other better campaign. Yeah, I agree with that. And Paul says I don't think GW get away with much with the fan base they've got. They've definitely aligned 8th edition and AOS a lot closer than they've ever been in the past. But yeah, I don't think they could get away with it. Just a direct reskin. Jasper is saying he's pretty glad they fixed the Vanguard Stormcast Eternals. Yes, I'm glad to see that as well, mate. And Paul says if GW came up with the idea, there would be riots in the streets. I think we have to sign it separately. So miniatures games are very different, really. I think this is specifically around board games, and I just maybe it'll work. Maybe people buy so many board games that they don't mind buying a reskin for a game they already own, because they can get it cheaper because they already own some of the components. To me, it sounds like this is just going to be an ongoing Kickstarter thing where they'll just keep going to Kickstarter and they'll say, you've got two options here. You can either get the all-in pledge where you get all these expansions and everything else, and you get the core system, the core engine, or you can just buy all the expansions and everything else and there's a cheaper price. It doesn't fit retail very well, I don't think. Robert says, I have a lot of rules from the same company and most are based on the same game engine. They feel like the same game, just different time periods. Yeah. And what Paul's saying, their Second Life, I think, is the idea you can use the rules for more than one game. Give the rules a second life. Yeah, again, I'm not... It'll be interesting. Like I say, until I see it, it's just an opinion at the minute, but it'll be interesting to see how you take those same rules, retheme it or reskin it, and give a different experience. Because essentially that's what it needs. Otherwise, you're just playing the same game twice, aren't you? If that was the case, you might as well just play that game. And Paul saying there, sounds like a cop-out. Yeah, so I just thought I'd talk about, because it's really interesting. It could be something that ends up being an absolutely fantastic idea. It could be something that sort of could be the death knell for the company if they end up just sort of repeating the same game over and over again with a different colour, if you like. But it will be interesting to find out more in January when the Conan Kickstarter goes live and we can find out some more information. Adam there says, I'd honestly prefer to have all GW games with the same engine. Each army and its tactics would be individualized for me. Yeah, and maybe that's exactly what they're going to do with this, really. It's the stats that change the game and change the core rules, but it'll be interesting nonetheless. So we're coming up to 10:30 there now, so I'm going to call it a night. My throat's kind of starting to collapse on me now. I'm drying up. So I just want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. It's been a nice lively chat. I won't be here next Monday. There'll be no live stream next Monday as I'm traveling to Munich with work for 3 days. So I'll be setting off on Monday morning and I won't get back until late Wednesday night. So there'll be no live stream next Monday. But I will be, if you haven't subscribed or if you haven't joined the Facebook group, the BlackJack Legacy Community Facebook group, please join that. As I'll probably do some stuff over the weekend on there about the Tabletop Legacy Weekend 2, which we're hosting this weekend from Friday to Sunday. So I'll probably put a little bit of videos on there and share some pictures and bits and pieces on there as well. So if you haven't joined, please join that. And we'll be back in 2 weeks' time on a live stream. I'll try and get some other videos and stuff out between now and then if I can. I've got some stuff I want to do around this, what's it called? The Ravaged Lands, Defiled Ruins, about building that and how to paint that and stuff as well. So I want to try and get those videos out. But other than that, take care and I will see you in 2 weeks' time. Thanks for watching.